The forest had grown silent in the wake of the storm. Cameron trudged through the muddy underbrush, his boots squelching with each step as he surveyed the damage. Fallen branches littered the ground, and the air smelled of wet earth and broken pine. He was a wildlife researcher, accustomed to the aftermath of nature's fury. But something about this particular evening felt different, heavier somehow, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. That's when he heard it, a soft, desperate whimper cutting through the stillness. Cameron froze, tilting his head to pinpoint the source. There it was again, a cry so small and frightened that it made his chest tighten. He moved quickly but carefully, pushing aside torn foliage until he found her, a tiny wolf cub, no more than a few weeks old, huddled beneath a partially collapsed den. Her silver-gray fur was matted with mud, and her amber eyes were wide with terror. "Hey there, little one," Cameron whispered, crouching down slowly. He knew better than to make sudden movements. The cub's ears flattened against her head, and she pressed herself further into the debris, trembling violently. Cameron's trained eyes scanned the area. No mother, no siblings, no pack. The storm must have separated them, or worse. His heart sank as the reality settled over him. This cub was completely alone. As if reading his thoughts, the cub let out a broken, mournful cry that seemed far too profound for such a small creature. It wasn't just fear in that sound. It was loss, abandonment, the devastating realization that everything familiar had vanished. "Everyone left me," the cry seemed to say, though no words were spoken. Cameron had spent enough time with wolves to understand their language of emotion. Without hesitation, Cameron removed his jacket and slowly extended his hand. The cub flinched but didn't retreat further. She had nowhere left to go. Gently, so gently, Cameron wrapped the jacket around her small body and lifted her from the ruins of her den. She was lighter than he expected, fragile and shaking. "I'm not going anywhere," Cameron murmured against the soft fur of her head. "I promise you that." The cub went still for a moment, as if processing this new voice, this new scent, this new presence that didn't run away. Then, slowly, she pressed her tiny face into the warmth of Cameron's chest and released a shuddering sigh. 3 months had passed since that stormy night, and the research cabin had transformed into something Cameron never anticipated. Luna, as he'd named her for the moon-shaped marking on her forehead, had grown from a terrified, fragile cub into a spirited young wolf with boundless curiosity and an unshakable attachment to her human. Every morning began the same way. Luna would pad over to Cameron's bed, place her paws on the mattress, and gently nose his face until he woke. Her tail would wag furiously, her whole body wiggling with joy as if she couldn't believe he was still there, still real, still hers. "Good morning to you too, Luna." Cameron would laugh, scratching behind her ears the way she loved. But Cameron knew this couldn't last forever. Luna was growing stronger, wilder, more wolf than pet. She needed to be with her own kind, to learn the ways of the pack, to run free in ways his cabin could never allow. The thought of releasing her back into the wilderness filled him with a bittersweet ache, but he knew it was the right thing to do. Dr. Elena Martinez, a colleague from the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center, had been helping Cameron prepare Luna for reintroduction. She arrived one crisp autumn morning with news that made Cameron's stomach drop. "We've located a pack about 15 miles north," Elena said, sipping the coffee Cameron had prepared. "They've been receptive to orphan juveniles before. It's time, Cameron." Luna sat at Cameron's feet, her intelligent eyes moving between the two humans as if understanding the gravity of their conversation. Cameron reached down and stroked her head, feeling the softness of her fur beneath his fingers. "I know," he said quietly. "I've always known." The day of Luna's release arrived too quickly and too slowly, all at once. Cameron drove her to the designated area, Elena following in her own vehicle. Luna sat in the passenger seat, her head resting on Cameron's arm, occasionally glancing up at him with those trusting amber eyes when they reached the release point. Cameron's hands trembled as he attached the tracking collar around Luna's neck. This would allow them to monitor her integration into the pack, to ensure she was safe. But safety wasn't what worried Cameron most, it was the goodbye. He walked with Luna to the edge of the forest, where the trees grew thick and wild. This was where her new life would begin. Cameron knelt down, bringing himself eye level with the young wolf who had transformed his world. "You're going to be okay," he told her, his voice thick with emotion. "You're strong and brave, and you're going to find your family out there." Luna winced softly, pressing her forehead against his. In that moment, Cameron felt the same desperate plea he'd heard that stormy night. "Don't leave me." "Everyone leaves." Tears burned in Cameron's eyes as he wrapped his arms around her one last time. "I'm not going anywhere," he whispered fiercely. "Do you hear me, Luna? I'll always be here. This isn't goodbye, it's just ... It's just until we meet again. Luna pulled back and stared at him for a long moment. Then, as if understanding that this was necessary, that this was love in its truest form, she turned and trotted toward the tree line. She paused once, looking back over her shoulder. Cameron raised his hand in farewell, his vision blurred with tears. Go on, girl. Go be wild. And Luna did. She disappeared into the forest, into the life she was always meant to live. 6 months later, Cameron returned to the area for routine research. As he set up his equipment near a familiar stream, he heard movement in the brush. His heart stuttered as a fully grown wolf emerged, silver-gray fur gleaming in the sunlight, a moon-shaped marking on her forehead. Luna approached, slowly, cautiously, as wild wolves do. But when she was close enough, she did something remarkable. She sat down and pressed her forehead gently against Cameron's knee, just as she had that last day. I told you I wasn't going anywhere, Cameron whispered. His hand finding the familiar spot behind her ears. Luna's tail wagged once, twice, before she stood and trotted back toward the forest where her pack waited. But she paused at the tree line and looked back, and in that glance, Cameron understood. Some bonds, once forged in the darkest moments, can never truly be broken. Not by distance, not by time, not by the call of the wild. They had both kept their promises.